The subjectivity of the human evaluator is the important consideration. In addition, questions remain about how to judge excellence ordinarily and creatively in art and writing, let alone math or science. Although the quest for improved means of assessment continues, one thing is clear: any educational reform needs to include some way of knowing if standards are actually meeting the standards set and becoming the well-educated individuals the society wants. Therefore, a major item on the school reform agenda is to broaden means by which we measure student learning. There is an old saying that all teachers know well: you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Similarly, there we go. You can have a child in the classroom, but you cannot make him or her learn. Pouring information into students who are forcing them to do workbooks or problem sheets won't always do it, nor will the great majority of students learn if simply allowed to wander through the library or laboratory on their own. Something must happen inside learners before they can learn. Curiosity, a problem that they want or need to solve, and then, with the direct or indirect help of a teacher, student construct knowledge from the information available to them. And we will now go to the top of page 386. Constructivism is a theory of knowledge acquisition built on the idea that learners interact with new information to construct meaning of it. Constructivism provides a frame of reference of the organizing classroom practices so that students learn in all content areas, unlike educational practices which learners passively receive information. The constructive approach requires that learners actively interact with the information, building on their prior knowledge, attitudes, and values. The video case elementary school language arts inquiry learning shows a lesson that takes the constructivist approach and, as the teacher states, puts students in charge of their own learning. As learners encounter new information or experiences, they ask themselves, what makes sense here? What happens when I do this or change that? In this active learning process, learners build and add to their understanding of concepts, rules, and strategies through direct hands-on experimentation. Although the focus is on the students in theory, teachers play a key role in constructivist classrooms. Through a technique called scaffolding, teachers use clues, questions, and hints to extend students' understanding. In this way, teachers help students construct a scaffold by linking in prior knowledge to make sense of new information. How does constructivism advance the goals of educational reform? First, the primary ingredients of the constructivist approach are learners who take responsibility for their own learning. Teachers and the school play important supporting roles in this effect, but the initiative of the learners is essential. In short, students can achieve excellence only if they take responsibility for their learning. Ideally, constructivism classrooms foster experimental inquiry-based learning in an atmosphere of intelligence play. Constructivism incorporates many of the ideas that have been written about in this text, including inductive teaching, student-teacher interactions, cooperative learning, and multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary teaching, and extensive use of technologies. Although constructivism has many virtues, it is merely one theory of learning. One way of thinking about how knowledge and understanding are formed. It is certainly not the only way. Indeed, critics of this approach are quick to point out that students can construct incorrect answers. Further, critics remind us of it as a formidable task to regularly put constructivism into practice, to translate this theory of learning into a theory of teaching. Nevertheless, we believe constructivism can be a valuable corrective to match of classroom life. It can bridge the gap between teacher-centered drill or rote learning on the one hand and expressively abstract learning on the other hand. An ancient Chinese proverb captures well the essence of constructivism. Tell me and I forget. Show me and I will remember. Make me do and I will learn. We now go to the top of page 387. The past few years have brought a growing realization that the largest of our schools, although more resource-rich, efficient, and co-efficient, can have some destructive side effects to some students. Such large schools have an aura of its impersonality that results in the disengagement of many students. It is common to hear such statements as, "I'm lost here, no one really knows me and no one cares," or "I'm just a name in someone's gradebook." Although these criticisms are directed most often at high schools, they hold for many junior high and middle schools, even some elementary schools. Clearly, the larger our schools get, and the greater the number of classmates and adults with whom students must interact, the more students disengage, and disengaged students cannot achieve excellence. Some studies have found not only a decline in student engagement and therefore in academic achievement in large schools, but also a decline in faculty morale and an increase in faculty absenteeism in these facilities. Large schools are often equally overwhelming for parents, who then tend to remain at a distance and uninvolved in their children's school lives. School as community advocates believe that any school whose principal does not know the names of all its students is too big. Reforms such as James Comer of New Haven School Development Project and the late Theodore Caesar, founder of the Coalition of Essential Schools, argue that a sense of community is essential to the development of an academic environment. In these reform projects, new schools are purposely kept small and existing large schools are broken up into houses of 100 to 400 students. The number of teachers with whom the students, and we will flip to the top of page 388, interact is similarly reduced, such that these houses functions as schools within schools because students and teachers stay in the same house for several years. They are able to establish stronger and deeper relationships. Each student is a known person rather than a name or someone on a class roster. One obvious advantage of this house plan is that it allows teachers to plan together and to bring to bear their different perceptions of a child who is having difficulties or who has specific strengths. In addition, these smaller, more intimate schools environments provide a more stable emotional climate for students, faculty, advisors, and better knowledge of or more exposure to students that can offer them more help in dealing with student problems or challenges. In this smaller setting, advocates argue students are much more likely to achieve the standards of excellence set for them. Excuse me. To date, the federal government has devoted close to $100 million to its smaller learning community projects. The Gates Foundation has given $2 billion to create small standalone schools to help break up the large schools and several smaller schools within schools. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. Although research suggests that these changes are bringing about a better social climate, the hope for academic achievement results have not yet appeared. In fact, the unimpressive achievement test scores have created the Gates Foundation to abandon support of restructuring schools in smaller units. Whether or not this was a wise move will take years to research to find out. The overriding idea of establishing a school in a classroom is a strong sense of community and bonds of trust and warmth among students and between teachers and students must be a priority for true educational reform. In our global, rapidly evolving social economic environment, people need more than a high school or education. We must also be capable of continuously learning. 10 years from now, the jobs and tasks performed will likely be quite different from the jobs and tasks that are performed today. For this reason, schools must attend to the habits of the mind and skills that will keep people learning throughout their lives, making them lifelong learners. Not only must students become good learners, but they must also be enthusiastic learners. In other words, students must know how to learn and they must want to learn. The human brain is a glorious instrument capable of enormous feats of creativity, from writing symphonies to making scientific breakthroughs. The average brain can store and manipulate more information by several hundred times than the largest computers. Unfortunately, the brain has some drawbacks too. It loses or misfiles information. Numerous and assorted messages enter it through the eyes and ears, other scenes, and somehow get lost. When we want to remember an idea, it is often simply not there. Sometimes the information received gets modified so that when we take the exam, we are not sure whether a doubt that there are 2 quarts in a gallon or 4 pints in a quart. Thus, although the brain is humankind's treasure, it is hardly perfect. In any event,